The moment Claire Whitman collapsed into my arms, I knew my life was over. Daniel Harper never imagined that one act of kindness would put him face to face with a billionaire's wrath, a media firestorm, and a choice that would redefine everything he thought he knew about power, decency, and love. This is the story of a custodian who saved a CEO and paid the price. A single father who risked it all when walking away would have been easier. A quiet man who proved that integrity doesn't bow to wealth. If you want to see how far one good deed can go, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent lights in the 72nd floor hallway hummed with a frequency that Daniel Harper had long since stopped hearing. It was 4:47 a.m., and the building was as silent as a cathedral, just the way he preferred it. No executives barking orders, no assistants clicking past in heels that echoed like gunshots. Just Daniel, his cleaning cart, and the rhythmic swish of a microfiber mop across marble floors that cost more per square foot than his entire monthly rent. He moved with the practiced efficiency of a man who had turned monotony into muscle memory. Trash bins emptied, conference tables wiped down, windows buffed until they disappeared into the Manhattan skyline. Daniel had worked as a custodial supervisor at Whitman Capital for 6 years, and in all that time, he'd perfected the art of being invisible. That was the unspoken rule in places like this. People like him weren't supposed to be seen, and Daniel was fine with that. He pushed his cart toward the executive wing, the section of the building reserved for the people whose names appeared on the glass doors in elegant serif fonts. This was the empire of Leonard Whitman, a man worth more than some small countries, and his daughter Claire, who at 34 had already made a name for herself as the company's CEO, a title that came with equal parts admiration and scrutiny. Daniel had seen Claire Whitman exactly twice in 6 years. Once in an elevator where she'd smiled politely and said nothing. Once in a shareholders' meeting he'd been cleaning up after, where her voice had carried through the empty room, sharp, confident, unwavering. She was the kind of person who existed in a different atmosphere. Literally, she worked on the top floors. He worked in the spaces she left behind. Their worlds weren't meant to intersect, but tonight they would. Daniel rounded the corner toward the private elevator bank, and that's when he saw her. At first he thought he was imagining it. The woman slumped against the marble column looked nothing like the poised executive he'd seen in passing. Her black evening gown was twisted awkwardly around her legs. One of her heels lay on its side 3 feet away. Her hair, usually pulled back in a sleek ponytail, hung in dark tangles across her face, and her eyes, when they fluttered open and found his, were glassy, unfocused, desperate. "Help," she whispered. "Please." Daniel's first instinct was to look around. Surely someone else was coming. Security. An assistant. Someone whose job description actually included helping Claire Whitman at 4 in the morning. But the hallway stretched empty in both directions. The building was a ghost town. It was just him and her and the terrible understanding that something had gone very, very wrong. He approached slowly, the way you might approach an injured animal. "Ms. Whitman?" His voice sounded strange in the silence, too loud, too real. "Are you hurt?" She tried to sit up straighter and failed. I can't." Her words slurred together. "I need to go home." The smell of alcohol hit him then, sharp and sour. She'd been drinking, heavily. Daniel's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. Had she been at a company event? Had someone done this to her? Was she sick? Drugged? "Did someone hurt you?" he asked carefully. "No, no one." She pressed the heel of her hand against her forehead. "Fundraiser, downtown. I needed to leave. I thought I could drive. I can't even." She gestured vaguely toward the elevator. "Can't remember the code." Daniel crouched down to her eye level, making himself smaller, less threatening. "You can't drive like this, Ms. Whitman, and you can't stay here. Do you have someone I can call? Family? A friend?" Something dark and bitter crossed her face. "No." "What about your father?" "Especially not my father." The way she said it made Daniel's chest tighten. Whatever had happened tonight, Leonard Whitman was the last person she wanted to know about it. That complicated things. That complicated everything. Okay, Daniel said softly. Okay, let me think. He stood up, pulling out his phone. It was ancient, a model 3 generations out of date. But it worked. He opened the contacts. His list was pathetically short. Mia's school, the pizza place that delivered, his late wife's sister, who lived in New Jersey and barely spoke to him anymore. No one he could call at 5 a.m. to pick up an incapacitated billionaire. Security was out of the question. If he reported this, it would be documented, logged. It would become official. An official meant questions, investigations, the kind of scrutiny that could turn a bad night into a career-ending scandal for Claire Whitman and a life-altering mistake for anyone associated with it. Daniel had been around wealth long enough to know how these things worked. The help didn't save the powerful. The help became the scapegoat. Every logical part of his brain screamed at him to walk away, call security, let the system handle it, protect himself, and more importantly, protect Mia. His daughter was 8 years old and had already lost her mother to cancer. She depended on him completely. He couldn't afford to lose his job. Couldn't afford even a whisper of impropriety. But when he looked down at Claire Whitman, really looked at her, he didn't see a CEO. He didn't see wealth or power or risk. He saw a woman who was vulnerable and alone and asking for help. And Daniel Harper, despite every survival instinct he possessed, could not walk away from that. "All right," he said quietly. "I'm going to help you, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Claire looked up at him with eyes that were barely focusing. "I don't even know your name. Daniel Harper. I work here. Custodial." She blinked slowly, processing. "You clean?" "Yeah, I clean." A strange, soft laugh escaped her. "A janitor is saving me. That's perfect." Daniel ignored the comment. He didn't have time to be offended. "Can you stand?" "I don't know." He held out his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. Her palm was cold, trembling. Daniel pulled gently, and Claire struggled to her feet, swaying immediately. He caught her elbow, steadying her. "Easy, I've got you." She leaned heavily against him, and Daniel felt the full weight of what he was about to do. This wasn't just helping someone to their car. This was taking responsibility for another human being in a state where anything could happen, where every decision he made could be misinterpreted, where the word of a custodian meant nothing against the word of a Whitman, but he'd already made his choice. "We're going to my car," he said, "and then I'm taking you somewhere safe." "Okay?" "Where?" she mumbled. Daniel hesitated. There was only one place he could think of, one place where she'd be out of sight, where no one would ask questions, where he could make sure she was all right until she sobered up. It was also the worst possible idea he'd ever had. "My house," he said. The drive from Midtown Manhattan to Daniel's apartment in Queens usually took 40 minutes. At 5 a.m., with no traffic, it took 22. Claire Whitman spent the entire ride slumped against the passenger window of his 15-year-old Honda Civic, drifting in and out of consciousness. Daniel gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles ached. "What are you doing?" The question repeated in his mind like a mantra. He was bringing a woman he barely knew, a woman who could end his career with a single phone call, to the apartment where his daughter was sleeping. He was crossing every professional boundary that existed. He was putting himself in a position where, if this went wrong, no one would believe his side of the story. And yet, what was the alternative? Leave her in the building? Someone would find her eventually. Security cameras would capture everything. By morning, it would be a scandal. The CEO of Whitman Capital found drunk and helpless in her own building. The media would devour her. The board would question her fitness to lead, and Daniel, who had witnessed it all, would be dragged into the wreckage. Take her to a hotel? With what money? And what would he say when the front desk asked questions? What if she got worse? What if she needed medical attention? No. As insane as it was, his apartment was the only option that gave her dignity and privacy. The only option that didn't turn her worst night into a public spectacle. He just had to get her inside, make sure she was safe, let her sleep it off. Then in the morning, she'd wake up, realize what he'd done, thank him politely, and leave. Simple. Nothing about this was simple. Daniel pulled into the narrow parking lot behind his building. a 4-story walk-up wedged between a bodega and a laundromat. The paint was peeling. The stairs creaked. It was a universe away from the gleaming tower where Claire Whitman lived and worked. He turned off the engine and looked at her. She was awake now, staring out the window at the dim streetlights. "Where are we?" she asked. "My place. Queens. You're safe here." She turned to look at him, and for the first time that night her eyes seemed almost clear. "You live here?" "Yeah." "And you're bringing me inside?" "That's the plan." Claire studied him for a long moment, and Daniel couldn't read her expression. Suspicion, confusion, gratitude. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "I know." "I'm serious. You could have left me, called someone. You don't owe me anything." Daniel met her gaze. "Maybe not, but I couldn't leave you like that." "Why?" It was such a simple question, and Daniel didn't have a simple answer. He thought about Mia, about the kind of man he wanted to be for her, about the lessons you teach not through words but through actions. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. Claire looked away, and when she spoke again her voice was thick with something Daniel couldn't quite name. "I don't meet a lot of people who do the right thing." Daniel opened his door. "Come on, let's get you inside." Getting Claire up 4 flights of stairs was an exercise in patience and physics. She was unsteady, leaning heavily on Daniel's shoulder, pausing every few steps to catch her breath. Daniel kept one arm around her waist, the other gripping the railing, praying they didn't wake the neighbors. By the time they reached his door, both of them were breathing hard. Daniel fumbled with his keys, unlocked the door, and guided Claire inside. The apartment was small, a 2-bedroom with a living room barely big enough for a couch and a coffee table. The walls were bare except for a few of Mia's crayon drawings held up with magnets on the fridge. It smelled faintly of pancakes and laundry detergent. It was nothing compared to what Claire Whitman was used to, but it was clean, and it was safe. "Sit," Daniel said, steering her toward the couch. Claire sank into it gratefully, her head tipping back against the cushions. Daniel disappeared into the hallway and returned with a blanket, a glass of water, and 2 aspirin. "Drink this," he said, handing her the water. "Take these. You're going to feel awful in the morning." Claire obeyed mechanically, swallowing the pills and draining half the glass. Then she looked around the apartment, her gaze lingering on the framed photo on the side table. Daniel and Mia at the park, both of them grinning. "You have a daughter," she said. "Yeah, Mia. She's 8. "She's here?" "Asleep, in her room." Claire closed her eyes. "You brought me to your home, where your child is sleeping. Do you have any idea how insane that is?" "Yeah," Daniel said. "I do." "Then why?" Daniel sat down in the armchair across from her. He was exhausted, terrified, and completely out of his depth. But he was also certain of one thing. "Because if Mia was ever in trouble," he said quietly, "I'd hope someone would help her, even if it was risky, even if it didn't make sense. I'd hope someone would choose decency over convenience." Claire opened her eyes, and for a moment she just looked at him, really looked at him, and Daniel saw something he hadn't expected. Respect. "I don't even know you," she whispered. "No," Daniel agreed. "You don't. And you don't know me." "No. But I know you needed help, and I know I couldn't walk away." Claire was silent for a long time. Then she pulled the blanket tighter around herself and leaned back into the couch. "Thank you," she said. "For this. For everything." Daniel nodded. "Get some rest. We'll figure out the morning when it comes." He stood up, turned off the living room light, and headed toward the hallway. But before he reached Mia's room, Claire's voice stopped him. "Daniel?" He turned. "You're a good man," she said. "I don't think you know how rare that is." Daniel didn't respond. He just nodded once and disappeared into the hallway. He didn't sleep that night. He sat in the armchair by the window, watching the sky lighten from black to gray to pale blue, watching Claire sleep on his couch, listening to Mia's soft breathing from the other room, and he wondered what he'd just set in motion. Mia found her first. Daniel had dozed off sometime around 6, and when he woke, sunlight was streaming through the window, and his daughter was standing in the living room doorway in her pajamas, staring at the stranger asleep on their couch. "Dad?" Mia's voice was small, confused. Daniel shot to his feet. "Hey, sweetheart, morning." Mia's eyes didn't leave Claire. "Who is that?" Before Daniel could answer, Claire stirred. She sat up slowly, wincing, one hand pressed to her temple. When she saw Mia, she froze. For a long, awkward moment, no one spoke. Then Claire cleared her throat. "Hi." Mia stepped closer to Daniel. "Hans." Daniel put a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Mia, this is Ms. Whitman. She needed a place to stay last night. Ms. Whitman, this is my daughter, Mia." Claire attempted a smile, though it looked painful. "It's nice to meet you, Mia." Mia studied her with the blunt honesty of an 8-year-old. "You look like you feel sick." Claire let out a breathless laugh. "I do feel sick, very sick. Did you eat something bad?" "Something like that." Mia looked up at Daniel. "Can we make her pancakes? You always make pancakes when I don't feel good." Daniel blinked. Of all the reactions he'd expected, this wasn't one of them. Sure. Yeah, pancakes." He glanced at Claire, who looked equal parts mortified and touched. "You don't have to," she started. "It's no trouble," Daniel said quickly. "Seriously, just sit, rest. We'll figure out breakfast." And just like that, the strangest morning of Daniel Harper's life began. He moved through his tiny kitchen, mixing batter, heating the griddle, while Mia sat at the table and peppered Claire with questions. "Do you have kids?" "No." "Do you have a dog?" "No." "Do you like pancakes?" Yes, I do." "Good. Dad makes the best pancakes." Claire smiled, this time a real one. "I believe you." Daniel flipped the pancakes, trying not to listen too closely, trying not to think about how surreal this was. A billionaire CEO sitting at his kitchen table in last night's evening gown, talking to his daughter about favorite colors and school projects. When the pancakes were ready, he set 3 plates down and sat across from Claire. Mia immediately drowned hers in syrup. Claire ate slowly, mechanically, like someone going through motions. "Thank you," she said to Daniel, "for this, for last night, for not making this any harder than it had to be." Mia looked between them, confused. "What happened last night?" Daniel and Claire exchanged a glance. "Ms. Whitman had a rough evening," Daniel said carefully, "so I helped her out." "That's what you're supposed to do," Mia said matter-of-factly. "Help people." Claire's expression softened. "Your dad's very good at it." After breakfast, Claire excused herself to the bathroom. When she emerged, she'd washed her face and pulled her hair back. She looked more put together, more like the woman Daniel had seen in passing at Whitman Capital. But there was something different now, something quieter. "I should go," she said. "I've imposed enough." Daniel nodded. "I'll drive you." "You don't have to." "I'm driving you," Daniel said firmly. Claire didn't argue. The drive back to Manhattan was quieter than the night before. Claire stared out the window, lost in thought. Daniel kept his eyes on the road, his mind racing. What happened now? Would she pretend this never happened? Would she acknowledge him at work? Would this become a story she told at dinner parties, the time the janitor saved her, or would it become something worse? When they reached her building, a towering glass structure on the Upper East Side, Claire turned to him. "I need to ask you something," she said. Daniel's stomach dropped. "Okay. What you did last night, you didn't have to do it, and I know it put you at risk, so I need to know. What do you want?" Daniel frowned. "What do I want?" "Money, a promotion, a recommendation. People don't help for nothing, so what do you want in exchange?" For a moment, Daniel just stared at her, and then he understood. She thought this was transactional. She thought he'd helped her because he wanted something from her. "I don't want anything, Ms. Whitman," he said quietly. "Everyone wants something." "Not me. I helped because you needed help. That's it." Claire studied him, searching for the lie. But there wasn't one. "I don't understand you," she said finally. Daniel gave her a small, tired smile. "You don't have to." Claire opened the car door, then paused. "If anyone asks—" "No one's going to ask," Daniel said. "This didn't happen. You were never there. I never saw you." She looked at him for a long moment, and Daniel saw something in her eyes he couldn't name. "Thank you," she whispered, and then she was gone. Daniel didn't hear from Claire Whitman for 3 days. He went back to work, back to the night shift, back to being invisible. He pushed his cart through the empty hallways, cleaned the executive offices, and told himself that everything would go back to normal. But on the fourth day, everything changed. It was 5 a.m. Daniel was wiping down the windows in the executive wing when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned and froze. Claire Whitman stood in the hallway, not the disheveled, broken woman from that night. This was the CEO. Tailored suit, perfect hair, the kind of presence that made people straighten their spines. But her eyes were soft. "Mr. Harper," she said. Daniel set down his cleaning cloth. "Ms. Whitman, I need to speak with you." His heart sank. Here it was. The consequences, the fallout. Whatever story she'd decided to tell, whatever version of events protected her reputation, this was where it started. "All right," he said carefully. Claire glanced down the hallway, then back at him. "Not here, somewhere private." Daniel's pulse quickened. "Why?" "Because," Claire said quietly, "my father wants to see you." And just like that, Daniel Harper's quiet life shattered completely. The silence in Claire's office was suffocating. Daniel stood near the door, hands clasped in front of him, while Claire paced behind her desk like a caged animal. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan stretched out below them, a kingdom of glass and steel that suddenly felt very far away from the small apartment in Queens where this had all begun. "My father knows," Claire said finally, her voice tight. "I don't know how, but he knows." Daniel's throat went dry. "Knows what, exactly?" She stopped pacing and looked at him directly. "That I wasn't home that night, that I left the fundraiser in bad shape, that someone helped me." She paused. "He has people, Daniel. People who watch, who report. I thought I'd been careful, but apparently not careful enough." "What did you tell him?" "Nothing, not yet. But he's demanding to meet you." Claire's jaw tightened. And when Leonard Whitman demands something, it happens. Daniel felt the ground shifting beneath him. This was exactly what he'd feared. The moment when his good deed became evidence. When helping someone transformed into something that required explanation, justification, defense. "I can refuse," he said quietly. Claire shook her head. "No, you can't. If you refuse, he'll assume the worst. He'll investigate. He'll dig into your life until he finds something, anything, he can use. That's what he does." Her voice softened. "I'm sorry. I never wanted this to touch you. It's not your fault." "Isn't it?" Claire crossed her arms. "I got drunk. I put myself in that position, and you paid the price for helping me." Daniel took a breath. "When does he want to see me?" "Tonight, 6 o'clock, at his estate in Connecticut." "Connecticut," Daniel repeated. "That's 2 hours away." "I know. I'll drive you." "Ms. Whitman, Claire. After everything, you can call me Claire." Daniel nodded slowly. "Claire, you don't have to do this." "So, yes, I do. You're walking into this because of me. The least I can do is walk in with you." There was something fierce in her eyes, something protective. And Daniel realized that despite the power differential, despite everything that separated them, Claire Whitman was genuinely trying to shield him from whatever storm was coming. "Okay," he said. 6 o'clock. "Wear something nice," Claire added. "My father judges people in the first 30 seconds. Don't give him ammunition." Daniel glanced down at his custodial uniform. "I don't exactly have a closet full of suits." For the first time that morning, Claire almost smiled. "What size are you?" 2 hours later, Daniel found himself standing in a department store dressing room wearing a charcoal gray suit that cost more than his monthly rent. Claire had insisted, had actually driven him to the store herself, marched him to the men's section, and handpicked 3 options while the sales associate looked on in barely concealed shock. Now she stood outside the dressing room, waiting. "Well," she called. Daniel stepped out. The suit fit perfectly, tailored, professional, transforming him into someone he barely recognized. Claire's expression shifted, something unreadable crossing her face. "You look good," she said quietly. "I look terrified." "You hide it well." She adjusted his tie, her fingers quick and efficient. Remember, my father is going to try to intimidate you. Don't let him. Answer his questions honestly, but don't volunteer information. And whatever you do, don't apologize. It makes you look guilty. I'm not guilty of anything. I know that. But you need to believe it, really believe it. Because if you walk in there looking like you did something wrong, he'll treat you like you did. Daniel met her eyes. Why is he like this? Claire's hand stilled on his tie. Because he's spent his entire life believing that everyone has an angle, that kindness is weakness, that people only help if they want something in return. She stepped back. He can't fathom that someone would help me without expecting payment. That's a sad way to live? It's the only way he knows. They stood there for a moment, the busy sounds of the store fading into background noise. Daniel wanted to ask her more, about her father, about her life, about the fundraiser she'd fled from. But Claire's walls were back up, professional and distant. "Come on," she said. "We have a long drive ahead of us." The Whitman estate sat on 40 acres of manicured Connecticut countryside, hidden behind iron gates and towering oak trees. As Claire's car wound up the private drive, Daniel stared out the window at gardens that probably had their own full-time staff, at fountains that belonged in European palaces, at a mansion that looked like it had been airlifted from a different century. "This is where you grew up, Alman?" he asked. Unfortunately. There was no nostalgia in her voice. No warmth, just flat acknowledgement. The main house loomed ahead, 3 stories of stone and glass with columns that belonged in a museum. A valet appeared as Claire parked, but she waved him off. "I've got it." They walked to the front door together, and Daniel noticed how Claire's posture changed. Shoulders back, chin up, every soft edge hardening into armor. This wasn't the woman who'd eaten pancakes at his kitchen table. This was someone preparing for battle. The door opened before they reached it. A butler, an actual butler in a full suit, nodded at Claire. "Ms. Whitman, your father is waiting in his study." "Thank you, Bernard." The interior of the house was exactly what Daniel expected. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably cost more than his entire building. But it felt cold, sterile, like a museum where people happened to live. Claire led him through hallways that seemed to stretch forever, finally stopping at a set of mahogany double doors. She turned to Daniel, and for just a second her mask slipped. "Whatever happens in there," she said quietly, "remember, you did nothing wrong." Then she knocked. "Come in." The voice from inside was deep, authoritative, final. Claire opened the door. Leonard Whitman's study was all dark wood and leather, with bookshelves that reached the ceiling and a desk the size of a small car. The man himself sat behind that desk, and when he looked up, Daniel understood immediately why people feared him. Leonard Whitman was in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that filled a room just by existing. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Daniel's car, and his expression was carved from stone. "Claire," he said, not warmly, just acknowledgement. "Father, this is Daniel Harper." Leonard's gaze shifted to Daniel, and it felt like being scanned by a machine designed to detect weakness. Daniel fought the urge to look away. "Mr. Harper, sit." It wasn't a request. Daniel sat in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. Claire remained standing, positioning herself slightly between Daniel and her father. A human shield. Leonard leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Do you know why you're here? Your daughter said you wanted to meet me." "I want answers. There's a difference." Leonard's voice was ice. 4 nights ago, my daughter left a fundraiser in an impaired state. She didn't come home. Didn't answer her phone. At 6 a.m., she finally called her driver to pick her up. From Queens. He let that last word hang in the air like an accusation. "I'd very much like to know what happened in those missing hours." Daniel felt Claire tense beside him. "I helped her," Daniel said simply. "Helped her how?" "I found her at the office. She wasn't in good shape. I couldn't leave her there, and I couldn't think of anywhere else safe to take her, so I brought her to my apartment. She slept on my couch. In the morning, I drove her home. That's everything." Leonard's expression didn't change. "You expect me to believe that you, a custodian making $40,000 a year, brought my daughter, one of the most powerful women in New York, to your home out of the goodness of your heart. No ulterior motive, no expectation of reward. Yes, that's remarkably naive, Mr. Harper. It's the truth. Leonard stood up, and even that simple movement felt like a power play. He walked around the desk, studying Daniel the way a scientist might study an insect. Let me tell you what I think happened, Leonard said. I think you saw an opportunity, a vulnerable woman, a chance to ingratiate yourself. Maybe leverage the situation later. Maybe ask for money. Maybe threaten to tell the press unless certain accommodations were made. Daniel's hands clenched on the armrests. That's not what happened. Then what did happen? Walk me through it, every detail. Daniel glanced at Claire, who gave him a nearly imperceptible nod. So he told the story. Finding Claire in the hallway, the decision to help, the drive to Queens, giving her the couch while he slept in the chair, breakfast with Mia, the drive back. He left nothing out, but he also didn't embellish. Just facts, delivered calmly. Leonard listened without interruption. When Daniel finished, the older man was silent for a long time. You have a daughter, Leonard said finally. Yes. 8 years old. Yes. And you brought a stranger, an intoxicated stranger, into the home where your child was sleeping. Daniel's jaw tightened. I made sure she was safe first. I stayed awake all night. Mia was never in danger. How do you know? You didn't know my daughter. Didn't know if she was violent, unpredictable. For all you knew, she could have... Father, stop! Claire's voice cut through the room like a knife. Daniel saved me. He protected me when I was at my most vulnerable. He asked for nothing. He's here because you demanded it, not because he wanted anything from us. So stop interrogating him like he's a criminal. Leonard turned to his daughter, and the temperature in the room dropped another 10 degrees. You're defending him. I'm stating facts. You barely know him. I know enough. Father and daughter stared at each other, and Daniel felt like he was watching a battle that had been fought 1,000 times before. Old wounds, old patterns. Finally, Leonard looked back at Daniel. What do you do at Whitman Capital, Mr. Harper? I'm a custodial supervisor. How long have you worked there? 6 years? And in those 6 years, have we ever spoken? No. Have you ever asked for a promotion, a raise, recognition? No. Why not? Daniel frowned. Because I do my job. That's what I'm paid for. Most people want more. They push, they climb, they make themselves indispensable. Leonard tilted his head. You don't strike me as someone without ambition. I have ambition, Daniel said quietly. I want to give my daughter a good life. I want to be someone she can be proud of. That's my ambition. Something flickered across Leonard's face. So brief Daniel almost missed it. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. Your wife, Leonard said. She passed away. Daniel's chest tightened. 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. The words sounded foreign coming from Leonard Whitman. Uncomfortable, like he wasn't used to expressing sympathy. Thank you. Leonard walked back to his desk and picked up a folder. He opened it, scanning whatever was inside. Daniel's stomach sank. The man had done a background check. Of course he had. Clean record, Leonard said. No debts beyond normal living expenses. Good performance reviews at work. References from your daughter's school describe you as reliable, involved. He closed the folder. You're exactly what you appear to be. Is that a problem? In my experience? Yes. People who seem too good usually aren't. Father, Claire's voice was sharp. Enough. Leonard held up a hand. I'm simply being thorough. You're being cruel. I'm being protective. There's a difference. Claire stepped closer to the desk. Daniel helped me when he didn't have to. When it would have been easier, safer, to walk away. He put himself at risk for someone he didn't know. That's called decency. Maybe you've forgotten what that looks like. The words hung in the air like a slap. Leonard's expression hardened. Watch yourself, Claire. Or what? You'll lecture me about responsibility? About image? About how I'm a disappointment? Claire's voice shook, but she didn't back down.
I'm 34 years old, Father. I run your company. I've earned the right to make my own decisions. And my decision is that Daniel Harper is not your enemy. He's not a threat. He's just a good man who did the right thing.
Leonard looked at his daughter for a long time. Then, without warning, he turned back to Daniel. Mr. Harper, would you excuse us? I'd like to speak with my daughter privately. Daniel stood immediately, grateful for the escape. Of course. Claire caught his arm as he passed. Wait in the hallway. I won't be long. Daniel nodded and stepped out of the study, pulling the door closed behind him. The moment it clicked shut, he heard voices rise, muffled but angry. He walked a few steps away, not wanting to eavesdrop, and found himself in a portrait gallery. Generations of Whitmans stared down at him from gilded frames. Stern faces, power and wealth captured in oil and canvas. Daniel studied them, these people who'd built empires, who'd shaped industries, who'd never once had to worry about making rent or stretching groceries to the end of the month. And he wondered what they'd think of him. The janitor in the borrowed suit, standing in their hallway because he'd helped one of their own. The study door opened 20 minutes later. Claire emerged first, her face flushed, eyes bright with barely contained emotion. Leonard followed, his expression unreadable. Mr. Harper, Leonard said. A word. Daniel walked back to the study doorway. Claire touched his shoulder as they passed each other, a brief, reassuring gesture, then disappeared down the hallway. Leonard stood by the window now, hands clasped behind his back, looking out at the manicured grounds. My daughter believes you're exactly what you appear to be, he said without turning around. An honest man who made a difficult choice for the right reasons. Daniel waited. I'm not convinced, Leonard continued, but I'm also not a fool. I've watched Claire for 34 years. I know when she's lying, when she's hiding something, when she's vulnerable. And right now, she's none of those things. She's certain about you. He finally turned around. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back to your job. You're going to continue doing exactly what you've been doing, and you're going to forget this ever happened. No press, no interviews, no attempts to leverage this situation. Are we clear? I never intended any of that. Good. Because if you do, if you try to use my daughter's moment of weakness for personal gain, I will destroy you. Not financially. That's too easy. I'll dismantle your life piece by piece. You'll lose your job, your apartment. Your daughter will see you as the man who exploited someone's vulnerability. Do you understand? Daniel met Leonard's gaze without flinching. I understand. But you're wrong about me. I don't want anything from your daughter. I don't want anything from you. I just want to live my life and raise my daughter and do my job. That's it. Leonard studied him for a long moment. We'll see. Then he walked to his desk and pulled out a checkbook. Daniel's stomach dropped. I don't want your money, he said immediately. It's not for you. It's for your daughter. Leonard began writing. College fund. Consider it a thank you for helping Claire. I said I don't want anything. And I said it's not for you. Leonard tore out the check and held it out. Your pride isn't more important than your daughter's future. Daniel stared at the check, at the number written on it. $50,000. Enough to actually give Mia options. Enough to change her trajectory. But taking it would mean owing Leonard Whitman, would mean crossing a line from good deed to transaction. No, Daniel said quietly. Thank you, but no. When Mia goes to college, it'll be because I worked for it, not because I helped someone one night. Leonard's eyebrows rose, the first genuine surprise Daniel had seen from him. You're refusing. Yes. You understand what you're turning down? I do, and I'm still refusing. For a long moment, Leonard just looked at him. Then slowly, he put the check down on the desk. You really don't want anything? No. Leonard sat down in his chair, and when he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, almost thoughtful. I built an empire on the principle that everyone has a price, that loyalty can be bought, integrity can be negotiated, and morality bends under the right pressure. He leaned back. You're the first person in 20 years to prove me wrong. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. My daughter was right, Leonard continued. You are exactly what you appear to be, and that terrifies me. Because in my world, people like you don't exist, which means I don't know how to predict you. You don't need to predict me. I'm not a threat to you or your family. No, you're something worse. Leonard's eyes were sharp. You're a reminder that not everyone operates the way I do, and that's dangerous in ways you can't understand. Daniel took a breath. Can I go now? Leonard waved a hand. Claire is waiting for you in the entrance hall. She'll drive you home. Daniel turned to leave, but Leonard's voice stopped him at the door. Mr. Harper? He looked back. If you hurt my daughter in any way, what I described earlier will seem merciful. Do we understand each other? Yes, but for what it's worth. Daniel met his eyes. I have no intention of hurting anyone. We never do, Leonard said quietly. That's what makes it dangerous. The drive back to the city was silent for the first 30 minutes. Claire gripped the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the road, jaw tight. Daniel sat in the passenger seat, still processing what had just happened. Finally, Claire spoke. I'm sorry. For what? For him. For all of it. For putting you through that interrogation. You didn't put me through anything. I made the choice to help you. This is just the consequence. Still, Claire's knuckles were white on the wheel. He had no right to threaten you like that. He's protecting you. I get it. Do you? Claire glanced at him. Because most people would have walked out, or demanded compensation, or told him exactly where he could shove his threats. Daniel almost smiled. I thought about it. What stopped you? Your face when we walked into that house. You looked like you were walking into a war zone, and I realized you deal with him all the time, every day. That's your normal. Daniel shook his head. I can handle one conversation. You live with it. Claire was quiet for a moment. He wasn't always like this. When I was little, before my mother died, he was different, warmer. But after she passed, she trailed off. He decided that emotion was weakness, that caring about people made you vulnerable. So he cut all of it out, became this fortress of a man. That sounds lonely. It is, for both of us, or both of... They drove in silence for a while. The city rose up ahead of them, lights beginning to glow as evening approached. Daniel? Claire's voice was soft. Yeah? Thank you. For standing up to him. For not backing down. For being exactly who you are. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he hadn't expected. Not gratitude, not relief, admiration. You're welcome, he said quietly. When Claire dropped him off at his building, she hesitated before he got out of the car. This isn't over, she said. My father, when he fixates on something, he doesn't let go. He's going to watch you, test you, try to find cracks. I don't have anything to hide. I know, but be careful anyway, please. Daniel nodded. I will. He started to open the door, but Claire stopped him with a hand on his arm. Daniel, one more thing. He looked back. If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call me. Understood? You didn't ask for this. You didn't deserve to be dragged into my family's mess. So if there's any fallout, any problems, you let me know. She handed him a business card with her personal cell number written on the back. Daniel took it, understanding what she was really saying. She was offering protection, alliance, a lifeline in case Leonard Whitman made good on his threats. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet, just be safe. Daniel climbed out of the car and watched her drive away. Then he walked up to his apartment where Mia was waiting with Mrs. Chen from down the hall, who'd agreed to watch her for the evening. Daddy! Mia launched herself at him. You're wearing a fancy suit. I had a fancy meeting. Did it go okay? Daniel hugged his daughter tight, breathing in the familiar smell of her strawberry shampoo. Yeah, sweetheart, it went okay. And as he said it, he almost believed it. But Daniel was wrong. Things were far from okay. The first sign came 3 days later when his supervisor called him into the office, a cramped room that smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee. Marcus Green had been managing the custodial staff at Whitman Capital for 15 years, and in all that time Daniel had never seen him look nervous. He looked nervous now. Close the door, Harper, Marcus said, not meeting his eyes. Daniel did, his stomach already sinking. Marcus shuffled papers on his desk, a tell that meant he was stalling. I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Are you in some kind of trouble? What? No, why? Because HR called me this morning, asked about your performance, your reliability, whether there'd been any complaints. Marcus finally looked up. In 6 years, they've never asked about you. Not once. And now suddenly, they're very interested in Daniel Harper. Daniel's hands clenched at his sides. Leonard Whitman. It had to be. I haven't done anything wrong, Daniel said carefully. I believe you. But someone upstairs doesn't. And when someone upstairs starts asking questions, it usually doesn't end well for guys like us. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Look, I don't know what this is about, and maybe I don't want to know. But whatever it is, be careful. The people on the top floors, they play a different game than we do. Daniel left the office feeling like the walls were closing in. He went through the motions of his shift, cleaning, organizing, trying to stay invisible the way he always had. But now he felt eyes on him. Security cameras that had always been there suddenly seemed more invasive. Passing executives who'd never noticed him before now seemed to register his presence. He was being watched, evaluated, judged. By the end of the week, 3 more things happened. First, his building's landlord called to inform him that his lease was up for review and that rent would be increasing by 30%. When Daniel protested that he'd been a reliable tenant for 4 years, the landlord simply said, "Market rates, Mr. Harper. Take it or leave it." Second, Mia's school called to say there was a problem with her financial aid application for the after-school program. Forms that had been approved for 2 years running were suddenly flagged for additional verification. The administrator sounded apologetic but firm. "We need to make sure everything is in order." Third, Daniel's car failed inspection. The mechanic showed him a list of required repairs that would cost more than the vehicle was worth. "Honestly, Mr. Harper, I'm surprised this thing is still running. You should think about getting something newer." None of these things were catastrophic on their own, but together, they painted a picture. Leonard Whitman had meant every word of his threat. He was applying pressure, testing Daniel, seeing how much it would take to make him crack. Daniel sat in his apartment that Friday night, Mia asleep in her room, staring at the stack of bills on his coffee table. The math didn't work anymore. Between the rent increase, the car repairs, and the loss of Mia's subsidized after-school care, he was looking at an extra $800 a month he didn't have. He could ask for more hours, pick up weekend shifts. But that meant less time with Mia, and she'd already lost so much. He could move to a cheaper apartment. But Mia's school was in this district, and it was good. Moving would uproot her life again. He could accept that he'd been backed into a corner by a billionaire who saw him as a problem to be solved. Daniel pulled out the business card Claire had given him. Her personal number, written in neat script on the back. He'd promised himself he wouldn't use it, wouldn't drag her into whatever game her father was playing. But looking at those bills, at the carefully constructed life that was starting to crumble, Daniel realized he didn't have a choice. He dialed. Claire answered on the second ring. "Daniel? Hey, I'm sorry to call. I know it's late." "It's fine. What's wrong? Are you okay?" Daniel let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Your father is coming after me." There was a pause, then, "Tell me everything." So he did. The HR inquiry, the rent increase, the school, the car. All the little ways his life was being systematically dismantled by someone with unlimited resources and a grudge. When he finished, Claire was silent for so long Daniel thought the call had dropped. "Claire! I'm here. She sounded furious. "I'm sorry. I should have known he'd do this. I should have protected you better. You're not responsible for your father's choices. Aren't I? You helped me. This is happening because of me." "No. This is happening because your father can't accept that someone did something good without wanting something in return." Daniel rubbed his eyes. "I'm calling because you offered help, and I need it. Not money, but maybe you could talk to him? Make him understand that I'm not a threat?" Claire's laugh was bitter. "Daniel, I've been trying to make my father understand things my entire life. It doesn't work. He sees the world the way he sees it, and no amount of evidence will change his mind once it's made up. So what do? You fight back." Daniel frowned.
I'm a custodian. He's a billionaire. How exactly am I supposed to fight that? By not backing down, by continuing to be exactly who you are, and by letting me help you. Her voice turned determined. I'll handle the lease. I know the company that owns your building. They do business with Whitman Capital. One call from me and that rent increase disappears. Claire, I can't ask you to... You're not asking, I'm offering. And before you refuse because of some misguided sense of pride, think about Mia. Think about what's best for her. Daniel closed his eyes. She was right. This wasn't about his pride anymore. Okay, he said quietly. Thank you. The school and the car, those are on you to fix. But I can make sure nothing else mysterious happens. And Daniel? Her voice softened. I meant what I said. You didn't ask for this, so stop trying to handle it alone. After they hung up, Daniel sat in the dark living room, feeling something shift. For 6 years, he'd operated on the principle that keeping his head down and working hard would be enough. That if he just did his job and took care of his daughter, everything else would work out. But Leonard Whitman had shattered that illusion, had shown him that sometimes, no matter how hard you tried to stay invisible, the world found you anyway. The question was, what was he going to do about it? The next morning, Daniel woke to find an email from his landlord. The rent increase had been rescinded due to administrative error. No explanation, no apology, just a terse notification that his lease would continue at the current rate. Claire had made good on her promise, but the relief Daniel felt was complicated by something else. Gratitude? Yes, but also a growing awareness that he was becoming entangled in something much larger than himself. Claire Whitman had just intervened on his behalf with her family's business connections. That created a debt, an obligation, a link between them that went beyond the simple act of helping someone in need. He was being pulled into her world, whether he wanted to be or not. At work that Monday, things got stranger. Daniel was cleaning the executive conference room when he overheard voices in the hallway. He recognized one immediately, Claire's assistant, a sharp woman named Jennifer who moved through the building like she owned it. The board meeting got moved to Thursday, Jennifer was saying to someone Daniel couldn't see. Ms. Whitman wants the quarterly reports ready by Wednesday at the latest. What about the rumors? The second voice was male, unfamiliar. What rumors? About her and that custodian. People are talking, saying she's been seen with him, that there's something going on. Daniel's blood went cold. Jennifer's response was ice. Ms. Whitman's personal life is none of your concern, or anyone else's. I suggest you focus on your actual job instead of office gossip. I'm just saying it looks bad. The CEO spending time with the help? People are going to ask questions. Then people should mind their own business. Footsteps retreated. Daniel stood frozen in the conference room, cloth in hand, mind racing. Rumors. Of course there were rumors. In a building full of ambitious people looking for any advantage, any scandal, the CEO's connection to a custodian would be irresistible gossip. And if the rumors reached Leonard Whitman, if he thought Daniel was pursuing his daughter, using their connection for personal gain, the current pressure would seem gentle by comparison. Daniel finished cleaning and went looking for Claire. He found her in her office, surrounded by papers, looking exhausted. We need to talk, he said from the doorway. She looked up, and something in his expression made her wave him in. Close the door. He did. People are talking about us, about you and me. They think there's something going on. Claire's jaw tightened. I know, Jennifer told me this morning. This is exactly what your father was afraid of, that I'd use the situation to get close to you. But you're not. It doesn't matter what I'm actually doing. It matters what people think I'm doing. Daniel paced the small space in front of her desk. I should resign, transfer to a different building, something to create distance between us before this gets worse. Absolutely not. Claire, no. She stood up, and there was steel in her voice. You're not quitting, you're not running, and you're not letting office gossip dictate your life. You earned your position here. You do your job well, and you have every right to work here without being harassed because you helped someone. This isn't about rights. It's about reality. Your father already thinks I'm trying to use you. If he hears these rumors, let him hear them. I'll deal with my father. How? By making it worse? By defending me again?
That just reinforces what he already believes, that I've manipulated you somehow. Claire rounded her desk, standing close enough that Daniel could see the determination in her eyes. You haven't manipulated anyone, and I'm not some naive princess being taken advantage of. I'm a 34-year-old woman who runs a multi-billion-dollar company. I think I can tell the difference between someone helping me and someone using me. Your father doesn't see it that way. My father sees threats everywhere because that's what he's trained himself to see. But I won't let his paranoia destroy a good man's life. She took a breath. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to keep doing your job. I'm going to keep doing mine. And if anyone has a problem with the fact that we're occasionally in the same building, that's their issue to work through. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to make her understand that her protection, while well-intentioned, was only making things more complicated. But looking at her face, at the stubborn set of her shoulders, he recognized something he'd seen in the mirror plenty of times. The look of someone who'd decided to fight, consequences be damned. Okay, he said finally, but if this blows up, it won't. But if it does, I'm the one who walks away, not you. Deal? Claire studied him for a long moment, then she held out her hand. Deal. They shook on it, and Daniel tried to ignore how right her hand felt in his, how easy it would be to let this become something more complicated than it already was. He left her office more confused than ever. The rumors intensified over the next 2 weeks. Daniel heard whispers in break rooms that went silent when he entered, saw knowing looks from coworkers who'd never paid attention to him before. Even Marcus pulled him aside again. I don't know what's going on with you and Ms. Whitman, his supervisor said carefully, and I don't need to know. But Harper, be smart about this. Women like her, they're not for guys like us. That's not judgment, that's just reality. Daniel wanted to protest that there was no him and Ms. Whitman, that they'd barely spoken outside of the 2 times she'd needed help, that the rumors were building something out of nothing, but he couldn't shake the memory of her hand in his, the way she'd looked at him in her office, like he was someone worth fighting for. And he couldn't deny that somewhere in the chaos of the past few weeks, something had shifted. He'd started noticing when Claire arrived in the morning, started being aware of her presence in the building, started catching himself thinking about conversations they'd had, moments they'd shared. It scared him. Because Marcus was right. Women like Claire Whitman weren't for men like Daniel Harper. They lived in different worlds, operated by different rules, and any attempt to bridge that gap would end badly for exactly one of them. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. Daniel was refilling paper towels in the executive bathroom when he heard the door open. Footsteps. Voices. He was about to announce his presence when he recognized who was speaking. Leonard Whitman. I don't care about the optics, Claire. I care about reality. You're spending time with that man. People are noticing. The board is noticing. The board should focus on our quarterly earnings, which are up 18%. Claire's voice was controlled but tight. My personal choices are not their concern. Everything you do is their concern. You're the CEO. Every decision you make reflects on this company. Helping someone who helped me reflects badly? Appearing to have an inappropriate relationship with an employee reflects badly. Yes. Daniel felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. He pressed himself against the wall, trying to figure out how to escape without being seen. There is no inappropriate relationship, Claire said, each word clipped. Daniel Harper is a good man who did me a favor. That's all. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've taken a particular interest in him, intervening with his landlord, defending him to me, making sure he keeps his job despite the rumors. I intervened because you were trying to destroy his life out of paranoia. I was protecting you. From what? From basic human decency? From someone who actually helped me without asking for anything in return? Claire's voice rose. I'm tired of this, Father. Tired of your suspicion. Tired of living in a world where every kind act is secretly a manipulation. That's naive. No. What's naive is thinking that money and power are the only things people value. Daniel Harper has more integrity in his little finger than most of the people in this building have in their entire bodies. And if you can't see that, it says more about you than it does about him. There was a long, terrible silence. Then Leonard spoke, and his voice was ice. Be very careful, Claire.
You're letting emotion cloud your judgment, and that's dangerous. Or maybe I'm finally seeing clearly. More footsteps. The door opened and closed.
Daniel waited, heart pounding, until he was sure they were both gone. Then he slipped out of the bathroom and headed straight for the stairwell. He couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't be the rope in Claire and Leonard's ongoing tug of war. Couldn't watch her defend him while her father systematically tried to dismantle his life. It had to end. Daniel made it to the parking garage before Claire caught up with him. He heard her heels clicking on concrete, turned to find her hurrying toward him, still in the tailored suit she'd been wearing upstairs. "Daniel, wait." He stopped but didn't turn around. "I heard you. In the bathroom. You and your father." Claire's footsteps slowed. "You were there?" "Yeah, I was there." Daniel finally looked at her. "This has to stop, Claire. The defending, the interventions, all of it. Your father is right. This looks bad. And it's only going to get worse." "I don't care how it looks." "Well, I do. Because when this falls apart, you'll still be the CEO. You'll still have your position, your power, your life. But me? I'll be the guy who got too close to the boss, the one who couldn't stay in his lane, and that follows you forever." Claire's face was flushed, her eyes bright. "So what are you saying? That I should just let my father win? Let him intimidate you into quitting?" "I'm saying that maybe he's not wrong. Maybe there is something inappropriate happening here." The words hung between them like a confession. Claire stared at him. "What?" Daniel ran a hand through his hair, exhausted. "I can't stop thinking about you, about our conversations, about the way you look when you're fighting for something you believe in. And that's a problem, Claire. Because I'm supposed to be the guy who cleans your office, not the guy who feels like this." For a long moment, Claire just looked at him. Then slowly she stepped closer. "What if I told you I can't stop thinking about you either?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "What if I said that the reason I keep defending you, keep finding excuses to see you, is because you're the first person in years who's treated me like an actual human being instead of a title?" Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. "Then I'd say we're both in trouble." "Probably." They stood there in the dim parking garage, close enough to touch, the space between them charged with everything they weren't saying. "This is a bad idea," Daniel said. "Terrible. Your father will lose his mind. Completely. I could lose everything. So could I." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman who'd shown up drunk and desperate in an office hallway, who'd eaten pancakes with his daughter, who'd stood up to her billionaire father and refused to back down, who was looking at him now like he was worth the risk. And Daniel made a choice. "I should walk away right now," he said. "You should. Tell you this is impossible, that we're from different worlds, that it'll never work." Probably true. But I'm not going to. Claire's breath caught. "No? No. Because you're right. You're the first person in 3 years who's made me feel like I'm more than just Mia's dad, more than just the guy who cleans up after everyone else. And that's terrifying. But it's also real." Claire closed the distance between them, and when she spoke, her voice shook. "So what do we do?" "I don't know. Figure it out one day at a time. Be honest with each other. Try not to let your father destroy everything we care about." A small, shaky laugh escaped her. "That's a terrible plan. You have a better one?" She shook her head. Then before Daniel could second-guess himself, before logic and fear could intervene, he reached out and took her hand. Claire's fingers wrapped around his, warm and certain. "This is going to be complicated," she said. "Yeah. People are going to talk. Definitely. My father is going to make our lives hell." "Without question." Claire looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face. "And you're still willing to try?" Daniel thought about Mia, about the life he'd built for her, about the risks of entangling their world with Claire's, about all the logical, practical reasons to walk away right now. Then he thought about the way Claire had defended him, fought for him, seen him as someone worth protecting, about the possibility of building something real with someone who understood what it meant to fight for the people you cared about. "Yeah," he said. "I'm willing to try." And standing there in that parking garage, holding hands like teenagers, Daniel Harper and Claire Whitman made a decision that would change everything. They just didn't know yet exactly how much. The storm broke exactly 3 days later. Daniel was walking Mia to school on a crisp Monday morning when his phone buzzed with a news alert. He almost ignored it. He rarely checked the news, and when he did, it was never good. But something made him pull it out, and when he saw the headline, his blood turned to ice. Whitman Capital CEO's secret romance, billionaire heiress dating company janitor. Below it, a photograph. Daniel and Claire in the parking garage, holding hands, standing close enough that the intimacy was unmistakable. The image quality was grainy, clearly taken from a distance, but their faces were recognizable, especially Claire's. "Daddy?" Mia tugged his hand. "What's wrong?" Daniel forced himself to breathe, to think. "Nothing, sweetheart. Everything's fine." But everything was not fine. By the time he dropped Mia at school and made it to work, the lobby of Whitman Capital looked like a war zone. News vans lined the street outside. Reporters clustered near the entrance. Security guards formed a human barrier, keeping the press at bay while employees hurried inside with their heads down. Daniel's phone had been ringing non-stop since the article dropped. Missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize, text messages from coworkers he barely knew, and 3 calls from Claire, each one more urgent than the last. He called her back from his car. "Where are you?" Her voice was tight, controlled, but he could hear the stress underneath. "Parking garage. I just got to work." "Don't come upstairs. Meet me in conference room B, 2nd floor, 5 minutes." "Claire, what's happening?" "Everything's happening. Just, please, 5 minutes." She hung up. Daniel sat in his car for a moment, staring at his phone, at the article that was probably being shared thousands of times across social media. Someone had been watching them, waiting for exactly the right moment to capture proof of whatever this was between them. And now the whole world knew. Conference room B was tucked in a corner of the 2nd floor, away from the executive wing. When Daniel arrived, Claire was already there, pacing like a caged animal. She'd pulled her hair back so tightly it looked painful, and her suit was immaculate, but her eyes were red-rimmed. "I'm so sorry," she said the moment he closed the door. "You didn't do this. I should have been more careful. Should have known someone might be watching. Should have—" She broke off, pressing her palms against the conference table. "The board called an emergency meeting. They want answers. They want to know if this affects my ability to lead, if there's been any impropriety, if you've received preferential treatment." Daniel felt sick. "Have you?" "What? Given me preferential treatment?" Claire looked at him like he'd slapped her. "You think that's what this is about? You think I'm helping you because of whatever's happening between us?" "I don't know what to think anymore, Claire. A month ago, I was invisible. Now I'm on the front page of the financial news because I'm holding hands with my boss." "I'm not your boss. You work for the facilities department. I run the company. There's no direct supervisory relationship." "You really think that distinction matters to anyone right now?" Claire's shoulders sagged. "No, I don't." They stood there in the sterile conference room, the weight of the situation pressing down on both of them. Outside, Daniel could hear the muffled sounds of the building coming to life, phones ringing, voices carrying, the normal rhythm of a workday. But nothing about today was normal. "What did you tell the board?" Daniel asked quietly. "The truth. That you helped me when I needed it. That we've developed a friendship. That there's been no impropriety, no exchange of favors, nothing that would compromise my ability to do my job or yours." "Did they believe you?" Claire's laugh was hollow. "Some of them. The others think I'm either naive or lying, and my father—" She stopped, her jaw tightening. "What did he say?" "He's calling for your immediate termination, says you're a liability, a distraction, that your presence in the building creates an untenable situation." Daniel had expected this, had known from the moment he saw that photograph that Leonard Whitman would use it as ammunition, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. "Then I'll resign," he said. "No." "Claire, be realistic. I can't work here anymore. Not with this hanging over both of us. Not when my presence is being used to undermine you. I won't let him force you out. I won't let anyone force you out." Daniel walked closer to her, lowering his voice. "This isn't about pride anymore. This is about protecting what you've built. Your career, your reputation,
And if me leaving is what it takes, what about your career, your reputation? You didn't do anything wrong, Daniel. You helped someone. You were kind. And now you're being punished for it because I couldn't keep my feelings in check. We both couldn't keep our feelings in check. Claire looked up at him, and the vulnerability in her eyes nearly broke him. I don't know how to fix this. Maybe we can't fix it. Maybe we just have to survive it. Before Claire could respond, the conference room door opened. Jennifer, Claire's assistant, stood in the doorway looking deeply uncomfortable. Ms. Whitman, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your father is here. He's demanding to see you. And Mr. Harper. Claire's expression hardened. Tell him we'll be there in 5 minutes. He's already in your office. Of course he was. The walk to Claire's office felt like a march to the gallows. Daniel's mind raced through scenarios, none of them good. Leonard Whitman had made his position clear weeks ago. Now, with photographic evidence of exactly what he'd feared, the man would be out for blood. Claire's office door was open. Leonard stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking out over Manhattan like a general surveying a battlefield. He didn't turn when they entered. Close the door, he said. Claire did. Then she moved to stand beside her desk, creating a physical barrier between her father and Daniel. Another act of protection that would probably make things worse. Leonard finally turned around. His face was a mask of controlled fury. Do you have any idea what you've done? The question was directed at both of them, but his eyes locked on Daniel. We haven't done anything wrong, Claire said before Daniel could speak. You've created a public relations nightmare. You've given the board ammunition to question your judgment. You've handed our competitors a story they'll use to undermine everything we've built. Leonard's voice was precise, cutting. And you. He looked at Daniel with undisguised contempt. You've managed to do in 1 month what I thought would be impossible. You've made my daughter look foolish. Father, that's enough. It's not nearly enough. This man came into our lives, into this company, and exploited a situation for personal gain, just like I said he would. Daniel felt anger rising in his chest. I never exploited anything. I helped your daughter because she needed help. Everything that's happened since then has been a consequence of your paranoia and her basic human decency. Don't you dare speak to me about decency. You're a custodian who saw an opportunity. I'm a single father trying to raise my daughter right, trying to teach her that helping people matters, that doing the right thing is worth it, even when it's hard. Daniel's voice shook. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't want attention or recognition or whatever you think I'm after. I just wanted to make sure your daughter got home safe. And now you want what? A relationship with her? A life in our world? You think this story ends with you two riding off into the sunset? I think this story ends with me losing my job and Claire losing the respect of everyone who matters to her. But yeah, some part of me hoped there might be something worth fighting for here. Leonard's eyes narrowed. You're even more naive than I thought. Maybe, or maybe you're so cynical you can't recognize genuine feeling when you see it. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Leonard took a step toward Daniel, and Claire immediately moved between them. Stop, she said, her voice sharp. Both of you, this isn't helping. What would help, Leonard said coldly, is Mr. Harper tendering his resignation, today, with a non-disclosure agreement that prevents him from discussing any aspect of his relationship with you or this company. In exchange, we'll provide a generous severance package and a neutral reference. Absolutely not, Claire said. This isn't your decision, Claire. This is damage control. And the board agrees with me. The board works for the shareholders, and the shareholders care about results, not gossip. Our numbers are excellent. The company is performing better than it has in 5 years. One photograph doesn't change that. One photograph changes everything if it makes you look compromised. If it suggests you're making decisions based on personal relationships rather than business sense. Claire's hands clenched into fists. I have never let personal feelings interfere with my professional judgment. Never. And the fact that you'd suggest otherwise says more about your lack of faith in me than anything else. Father and daughter stared at each other, and Daniel saw decades of conflict playing out in that single moment. All the arguments they'd had, all the disappointments, all the ways they'd failed to understand each other. I have faith in your abilities, Leonard said quietly. I have always had faith in your abilities.
but I also know that everyone has blind spots. And this man is yours. Claire's voice, when she spoke, was steady but cold. Then I suppose we're at an impasse, because I'm not firing him. I'm not forcing him to sign away his rights, and I'm not going to pretend that what we have is something shameful. What you have is inappropriate. What we have is real, and it's built on something you've never understood: mutual respect and genuine care. Leonard looked at his daughter for a long moment. Then he turned to Daniel. "Name your price," he said bluntly. Daniel blinked. "Excuse me?" "Everyone has a price. What's yours? 100,000? 200? Enough to relocate, start over somewhere else, give your daughter a better life?" The casual cruelty of it took Daniel's breath away. Leonard Whitman genuinely believed that every human connection could be reduced to a transaction, that money could solve any problem, buy any cooperation, erase any inconvenient truth. "There's no price," Daniel said. "I'm not leaving because you wave a check at me." "Then you're a fool." "Maybe. But I'd rather be a fool with integrity than a rich man with none." Leonard's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. "You're going to regret this," Leonard said. "Both of you. This company will tear you apart. The media will destroy you. Your daughter will grow up seeing her father as the man who slept his way into high society. Is that what you want for her?" The mention of Mia hit Daniel like a physical blow. Because Leonard was right about one thing. Mia would be affected by this. The other kids at school would hear the stories. Their parents would gossip. She'd become that girl whose dad dated the CEO. "Don't bring my daughter into this," Daniel said, his voice dangerous. "She's already in it. The moment you decided to pursue my daughter, you brought her into it." "I didn't pursue anyone. Claire and I—" Daniel stopped, realizing how it would sound, how it would be twisted. Leonard smiled coldly. "You see? You can't even explain it without sounding guilty. Because deep down, you know this is wrong. You know you're out of your depth, and you know it's only a matter of time before it falls apart." Claire stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "Get out." Leonard turned to her. "Claire, I said get out. This is my office, my company that I run. And I'm done listening to you treat Daniel like he's some kind of criminal, when all he's done is be a better person than anyone in this building. You're making a mistake." "Then it's my mistake to make. But I'm not going to stand here and let you bully him. Or me. Not anymore." For the first time since Daniel had met him, Leonard Whitman looked uncertain. He opened his mouth, closed it, then walked to the door. But before he left, he turned back. "I love you, Claire. Everything I've done has been to protect you. I hope someday you'll understand that." "I understand it," Claire said quietly. "I just don't agree with it." Leonard left, the door closing softly behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Claire stood perfectly still for a moment, then sank into her desk chair like a puppet with cut strings. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "I just told my father to leave my office, in front of the man he thinks is corrupting me. So, no, I'm not okay. But I will be." Daniel pulled up a chair, sitting across from her. "You didn't have to do that. Defend me like that." "Yes, I did." Claire looked at him, really looked at him. "Do you want to walk away?" It was the question Daniel had been avoiding, the one that kept him awake at night, staring at the ceiling while Mia slept in the next room. "Part of me does," he admitted. "The part that wants to protect Mia from all this. The part that's terrified of what happens when we can't control the narrative anymore. The part that knows your father is probably right about how this ends. And the other part?" Daniel reached across the desk and took her hand. "The other part hasn't felt this alive in 3 years. The other part looks at you and sees someone worth fighting for. Someone who makes me want to be braver than I actually am." Claire's eyes glistened. "I'm scared, Daniel." "Me too. I don't know how to do this. How to have something real when everything else in my life is performance and strategy. We figure it out together, one day at a time, starting with getting through today." Claire squeezed his hand. "Okay, together." The intercom on Claire's desk buzzed. Jennifer's voice came through, carefully neutral.
Ms. Whitman, the board is ready for you in conference room A. Claire took a deep breath, then stood up. She smoothed her suit, straightened her shoulders, and became the CEO again. But before she left, she looked back at Daniel. "Stay," she said. "Don't leave the building. I'll need to see you after this meeting." "Claire, if they ask you to choose, they won't. And if they do, I already know my answer."
She left, and Daniel was alone in her office, surrounded by the trappings of power and success that felt increasingly hollow. He walked to the window, looking out at the city below, and wondered how his life had become so complicated so quickly. His phone buzzed, a text from Mia's school. "Mr. Harper, we need to speak with you at your earliest convenience regarding Mia. Please call the principal's office." Daniel's heart sank. It had already started. The fallout was reaching his daughter. He called immediately. The school secretary connected him to Principal Morrison, a kind woman who'd always been understanding about Daniel's situation as a single parent. "Mr. Harper, thank you for calling back so quickly." Her voice was gentle but concerned. "I wanted to let you know that Mia had an incident in class this morning. Some of the other children were talking about an article they'd seen, about you and someone named Claire Whitman."
Mia became upset and had to spend time with the counselor. Daniel closed his eyes. "How is she now?" "She's calm, but confused. She's asking questions about why people are saying things about her daddy on the internet. I thought you should know before pickup today." "Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. I appreciate you calling." "Mr. Harper, I don't know what's happening in your personal life, and frankly, it's none of my business. But Mia is a sweet child. If there's anything we can do to support her through this, please let us know." After hanging up, Daniel stood in Claire's office, feeling the full weight of his choices crashing down. This wasn't just about him and Claire anymore. It was about Mia being asked questions by her classmates, about her innocence being invaded by a story she was too young to understand. Leonard Whitman had been right about one thing. Daniel's choices were affecting his daughter, and that was unforgivable. When Claire returned from the board meeting 2 hours later, she looked exhausted but resolute. Daniel was still in her office, had spent the time pacing, thinking, preparing himself for what he needed to say. "How did it go?" he asked. "Better than expected. Worse than I hoped." She sat down heavily. "The board isn't demanding your termination, but they are demanding full transparency. They want documentation of every interaction we've had. They want to review your employment history. They want assurance that you haven't received preferential treatment." "I haven't." "I know that, but we have to prove it, which means opening up everything to scrutiny." Daniel nodded slowly. "And if they find something that looks questionable, even if it's innocent, then we deal with it, together, like we said." "Claire," Daniel's voice was heavy. "Mia's school called. Kids were talking about the article. She got upset, had to see the counselor." Claire's face fell. "Oh no. Daniel, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. But it is reality. This thing between us, it's not just affecting our lives anymore. It's affecting hers, and I can't let that continue." "What are you saying?" Daniel took a breath, feeling like he was about to step off a cliff. "I'm saying maybe your father is right. Maybe we need to create distance. Not forever. Just until things calm down. Until the media moves on to the next story." "That could take months, but I know." Claire stood up, walking around the desk to stand in front of him. "Is that what you want? Distance?" "No, but it's what Mia needs. She's 8 years old. She shouldn't have to deal with this because I fell for someone." "You fell for me?" Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. Daniel hadn't meant to say it like that, hadn't meant to put words to the feeling that had been growing for weeks, but it was out now, hovering between them. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I did, which is why this is so hard." Claire reached up, cupping his face with both hands. "I fell for you too, somewhere between the pancakes and you standing up to my father, somewhere in all those moments when you were just impossibly decent." "Claire, but you're right. Mia comes first. She has to. So if you need time, if you need space, I understand." Her voice cracked slightly. "I don't like it, but I understand." Daniel pulled her into his arms, and they stood there in her office, holding each other while the world outside tried to tear them apart. This isn't over, he said into her hair. It's just paused. Promise? Promise. They pulled apart, and Claire wiped at her eyes quickly, professionally. Back to being the CEO who couldn't show weakness. I should go, Daniel said. Pick up Mia, talk to her. Try to explain something I don't fully understand myself. What will you tell her? The truth. That sometimes doing the right thing is complicated. That sometimes you have to be patient. That sometimes the people you care about are worth waiting for. Claire's smile was sad but genuine. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She keeps me honest, keeps me focused on what actually matters. Daniel walked to the door, then turned back. Claire stood by her desk, looking smaller somehow, more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. For what it's worth, he said, you're worth waiting for too. Then he left, walking through the building one more time as Daniel Harper, the custodian who'd somehow captured the heart of Claire Whitman. Tomorrow, things might be different. Tomorrow, they might have to pretend this never happened. But tonight, he had a daughter to take care of, and that was always going to be his first priority. That evening, Daniel sat on Mia's bed while she hugged her stuffed rabbit, eyes red from crying. Are people mad at you, Daddy? She asked in a small voice. Some people are confused. They don't understand something, so they're talking about it. Emma said you're dating a princess, but she said it mean, like it's a bad thing. Daniel's heart broke a little. Ms. Whitman, Claire, isn't a princess. She's just a person, a very nice person who I care about. And sometimes when grown-ups care about each other, other people have opinions about it. Do you love her? The question caught Daniel off guard. Leave it to an 8-year-old to cut through all the complexity and ask what actually mattered. I think I might, he said honestly, but it's complicated right now. Because she's rich and you're not? Partly, but also because I need to make sure you're okay first. You're the most important person in my world, Mia. You always will be. Mia was quiet for a moment. Then, I liked her when she had pancakes with us. She was nice to me. She was. She is. Then I don't care if she's rich. If she makes you happy, that's good. Daniel pulled his daughter close, overwhelmed by her simple wisdom. When did you get so smart? I'm 8, she said seriously. That's pretty old. He laughed despite everything. You're right, very old and very wise. That night, after Mia fell asleep, Daniel sat in his dark living room and thought about choices, about the decision he'd made weeks ago to help a stranger, about how that single act of kindness had cascaded into something bigger than he could have imagined. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Thank you for today, for understanding, for putting Mia first. That's what makes you who you are. He texted back. Thank you for defending me, for seeing me, for making me believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. It will work. Eventually. We just have to be patient. I'm not good at patient. Me either, but for you, I'll learn. Daniel smiled in the darkness, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope, as it turned out, was harder to hold on to than Daniel expected. The next 3 weeks were brutal. The media attention didn't fade. It intensified. Think pieces appeared in business journals about power dynamics in the workplace. Gossip sites ran polls asking readers to weigh in on whether Claire and Daniel's relationship was romantic or exploitative. Someone started a thread on social media documenting every interaction between them that anyone could remember, analyzing them for signs of impropriety. Daniel stopped reading the articles after the first few days, but he couldn't stop the world from reacting to them. At work, the atmosphere became toxic. Some coworkers treated him with new deference, like proximity to Claire had somehow elevated his status. Others avoided him entirely, as if association might taint them by proxy. Marcus pulled him aside 3 separate times to ask if he was sure he knew what he was doing. This building runs on hierarchy, Harper, his supervisor said during their third conversation. You're messing with the natural order. That never ends well for the person on the bottom. Daniel wanted to argue that there shouldn't be a natural order, that people were people regardless of their job titles. But Marcus wasn't wrong about how the world actually worked. Especially not this world, where wealth and power created invisible barriers that were almost impossible to cross. Claire, meanwhile, was fighting her own battles.
The board demanded weekly updates on her decision-making process. Investors questioned whether the distraction would affect quarterly earnings. And the press camped outside her building, shouting questions every time she left for work. Through it all, she and Daniel maintained their distance. They didn't speak at work beyond professional courtesies. Didn't text except for occasional late-night messages that were carefully worded to avoid anything that could be misconstrued. Didn't see each other outside the building. It was the right thing to do. The responsible thing. It was also slowly killing both of them. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday in early November. Daniel was leaving the building after his shift when he saw the news vans again. But this time, they weren't focused on the main entrance. They were clustered around the side door, the one Claire always used to avoid attention. Something was wrong. Daniel pushed through the crowd, ignoring the reporters who shoved microphones in his face, and found Claire standing near her car, soaking wet, surrounded by journalists shouting questions.
Ms.
Whitman, is it true the board asked you to resign?
Claire, how do you respond to accusations of favoritism?
Are you and Daniel Harper still seeing each other? Claire's face was a mask, but Daniel could see the cracks, could see how close she was to breaking. And despite every logical reason to stay away, despite knowing that intervening would only make things worse, he couldn't watch her endure this alone. He stepped into the circle of reporters, positioning himself between them and Claire. "That's enough," he said, his voice carrying over the rain and the shouted questions. "Back up. Give her space." "Daniel Harper, are you and Miss Whitman in a relationship? Did Whitman Capital give you special treatment? How does it feel to be dating one of the richest women in New York?" Daniel ignored them all, turning to Claire. "You okay?" She looked at him, surprise and relief, and something else flickering across her face. "I'm fine." "You're not. Come on." He took her arm, gently but firmly, and guided her toward her car. The reporters pressed closer, cameras flashing, but Daniel kept moving, creating a path through the chaos. Claire unlocked her car with shaking hands. Daniel opened the driver's side door for her, shielding her from the cameras as she got in. "Daniel," she started. "Drive safe," he said. "I'll handle this." Then he closed her door and turned back to the reporters. They immediately swarmed him, voices overlapping in a cacophony of invasive questions. "Listen," Daniel said, raising his voice. "I'm going to say this once, and then I'm done talking. Claire Whitman is one of the most capable, intelligent, dedicated people I've ever met. She has earned every bit of her position through hard work and skill. And whatever relationship she and I have or don't have is nobody's business but ours. So you can write your stories, make your assumptions, and chase your clicks. But you're not going to harass her for my choices. So you admit you're in a relationship." Daniel smiled grimly. "I admit that I care about her. Beyond that, you'll have to use your imagination. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a daughter to get home to." He walked away, leaving the reporters scrambling to capture his words, and climbed into his ancient Honda. His hands were shaking on the steering wheel. His phone rang before he'd even left the parking lot. "Claire, what did you just do?" Her voice was somewhere between laughing and crying. "Probably made everything worse. You defended me in front of the entire New York press corps. Yeah, well, someone had to, and your PR team wasn't there." "Daniel," she took a breath. "That was incredibly stupid and incredibly brave, and I can't keep doing this distance, this pretending. It's killing me." "I know. So what do we do? Because I've tried being patient. I've tried letting things cool down, but they're not cooling down. They're getting worse. And I'm tired of fighting this alone." Daniel pulled out of the parking lot, windshield wipers beating against the rain. "Then maybe we stop fighting it alone. Maybe we stop trying to make everyone else comfortable and start being honest about what this is." "What is it?" Daniel had spent 3 weeks thinking about that question, 3 weeks analyzing his feelings, questioning his motives, trying to determine if what he felt was real or just the result of extraordinary circumstances. "It's real," he said quietly. "Whatever this is between us, it's real. And I'm tired of pretending it's not." There was a long pause. Then, "Meet me somewhere. Not your place, not mine. Somewhere neutral." "When?" "Now. I don't want to wait anymore." They met at a small diner in Brooklyn, The kind of place where nobody cared who you were as long as you tipped well. Claire arrived 10 minutes after Daniel, still in her work clothes but with her hair down, looking more like the woman who'd eaten pancakes in his kitchen than the CEO who commanded boardrooms. She slid into the booth across from him, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "Hi," she said. "Hi." A waitress appeared, poured coffee neither of them had asked for, and disappeared. The normalcy of it was almost jarring after weeks of chaos. "I quit," Claire said suddenly. Daniel choked on his coffee. "What?" "Not permanently. I took a leave of absence. Told the board I needed time to address the situation properly. They agreed, reluctantly, but they agreed. Claire, you can't quit your job because of me." "I'm not quitting because of you. I'm taking time because I need perspective. Because I've been running that company for 6 years without a break, and I've forgotten what it's like to make decisions based on what I want instead of what's expected." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "And because I realized something today, standing in that rain with reporters screaming at me. I don't care what they think. I don't care what the board thinks. I care what you think, what Mia thinks, what I think when I look in the mirror." "And what do you think?" "I think I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm worthy of my last name, worthy of my position, worthy of respect. But the only time I've felt actually worthy, actually seen, is when I'm with you." Daniel reached across the table, taking her hand. "You're worthy because of who you are, Claire. Not because of your name or your job or anything else. You're worthy because you're kind and fierce and you stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. Even when it costs me? Especially then." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so tired, Daniel. Tired of fighting, tired of defending, tired of being strong all the time." "Then don't be. Not right now. Not with me." She let out a shaky breath, and Daniel saw all the armor she wore, all the protective layers she'd built up over years of living in her father's world, finally crack. "What if this doesn't work?" she whispered. "What if we try, really try, and it falls apart anyway?" "Then at least we'll know. At least we won't spend the rest of our lives wondering what if." They sat there in that diner for 2 hours, talking about everything and nothing, about Mia's latest school project, about Claire's plans for her leave of absence, about the things they'd wanted to say during those 3 weeks of silence but couldn't. And slowly, the weight that had been pressing down on both of them began to lift. When they finally left, stepping out into the cool November night, Claire turned to Daniel. "I want to meet her," she said. "Properly. Not as the woman who crashed on your couch, but as whatever I am to you now." "Are you sure? The media is still watching. If they see us together, let them see. I'm done hiding, done pretending. If we're doing this, let's actually do it." Daniel thought about Mia, about how she'd asked if he loved Claire, about how she'd said that if Claire made him happy, that was good. "Okay," he said. "Saturday. Come over for breakfast. I'll make pancakes." Claire smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her in weeks. "I'd like that." Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. Daniel had been up since 6, cleaning the apartment with an intensity that made Mia laugh. "Daddy, she's already seen our house. You don't have to make it perfect." "I'm not making it perfect. I'm making it presentable." "It's the same thing." "No, it's—" Daniel stopped, realizing he was arguing cleanliness standards with an 8-year-old. "You're right. I'm nervous." "Why? You like her." "Yeah, but this is different. This is official. This is me introducing someone to you as someone important to me." Mia considered this seriously. "More important than Mrs. Chen?" Daniel laughed. Their neighbor was nice, but the comparison was ridiculous. "Yes, sweetheart, more important than Mrs. Chen." "Okay, then I'll be extra polite." When Claire knocked at 9, Daniel took a deep breath before opening the door. She stood in the hallway wearing jeans and a sweater, looking nothing like the CEO who commanded billion-dollar deals and everything like someone he could build a life with. "Hi," she said, holding up a bakery box. "I brought muffins. I know you said pancakes, but I thought, they're perfect. Come in." Mia appeared in the hallway, dressed in her favorite purple dress, the one she saved for special occasions. "Hi, Ms. Whitman," she said formally. Claire crouched down to her eye level. Hi, Mia, and please call me Claire. Ms. Whitman makes me feel like I'm at work. Okay, Claire, I like your sweater. Thank you, I like your dress. Purple's a great color. It's my favorite. Daddy says it makes me look like a princess. He's absolutely right. And just like that, the ice broke. By the time breakfast was on the table, Mia was chattering away about school, about her friends, about the book she was reading. Claire listened attentively, asking questions, genuinely engaged in Mia's 8-year-old world. Daniel watched them together, his daughter and the woman he'd fallen for, and felt something settle in his chest. This could work. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges and obstacles and probably more media attention than any of them wanted. But it could work. After breakfast, while Mia was in her room playing, Claire helped Daniel with the dishes. She's amazing, Claire said, drying a plate. Smart, funny, kind. You've done an incredible job with her. She makes it easy, most of the time. Still, single parenting isn't simple. You should be proud. I am. She's the best thing I ever did. Daniel rinsed another dish.
What about you? Do you want kids someday? Claire was quiet for a moment. I never thought I did. Never thought I had room in my life for that kind of vulnerability. But lately, she glanced toward Mia's room. Lately, I've been reconsidering a lot of things I thought I knew about myself. Before Daniel could respond, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Mr. Harper? This is Leonard Whitman. Daniel's stomach dropped. He mouthed, "Your father," to Claire, whose eyes widened. Mr. Whitman, how did you get this number? I have resources, Mr. Harper, but that's not why I'm calling. I'd like to speak with you in person, today if possible. I don't think that's a good idea. Nevertheless, it's necessary. There are things I need to say, things that can't wait. A pause. Please. I'm asking, not demanding. The please surprised Daniel. Leonard Whitman didn't strike him as someone who said please often. Hold on. He covered the phone. Your father wants to meet. Says he has things he needs to say. Claire's expression was unreadable. Do you want to see him? Not particularly, but if he's reaching out, Daniel shrugged. Maybe it's time to clear the air. I'll come with you. Claire, wherever this goes, we go together, remember? Daniel uncovered the phone. Fine. But Claire's coming, and we meet somewhere public, not your estate. Agreed. There's a cafe on 5th Avenue, Mazzo's, 1 hour. He hung up before Daniel could respond. Claire called Mrs. Chen to watch Mia, and they headed into the city. The cafe was small, upscale, the kind of place where conversations happened over expensive coffee and discretion was assumed. Leonard was already there when they arrived, sitting at a corner table. He stood when he saw them, a gesture of respect that surprised Daniel. Claire, Mr. Harper, thank you for coming. They sat. A waiter appeared, took orders that no one really wanted, and disappeared. Leonard looked older than Daniel remembered, tired. The armor of certainty he'd worn during their last meeting seemed diminished. I owe you both an apology, Leonard said without preamble. I've spent the past 3 weeks watching the situation unfold, watching the media tear you apart, watching my daughter take a leave of absence from a job she loves, and I've had to confront something uncomfortable. What's that? Claire asked, her voice carefully neutral. That I was wrong. About Mr. Harper. About his motives. About the nature of your relationship. Leonard looked directly at Daniel. You haven't asked for money. Haven't leveraged the situation. Haven't done any of the things I was certain you would do. And that's forced me to reconsider some fundamental assumptions I've held for a very long time. Daniel didn't know what to say. This was not the Leonard Whitman he'd expected. I've built my entire life on the principle that people are self-interested, Leonard continued. That everyone has an angle. That trust is foolish and vulnerability is weakness. And it served me well in business, made me successful, made me rich. He paused. It's also made me lonely. And it's damaged my relationship with the only person who actually matters to me. He looked at Claire, and Daniel saw genuine pain in his eyes. When your mother died, Leonard said to his daughter, I made a choice. I decided that caring too much, letting people in, was dangerous. That if I could just control enough variables, manage enough risks, I could protect you from ever being hurt the way I was hurt. But all I did was hurt you myself, push you away, make you feel like you had to be perfect to earn my love. Claire's hands were clenched in her lap. Dad, let me finish, please. Leonard took a breath. Watching you with Mr. Harper, watching the way you defend him, the way you look at him, it reminded me of how your mother and I were. Before the walls went up, before I forgot what it meant to trust someone completely. He turned to Daniel. You're not what I expected, Mr. Harper. You're better. You're decent in a way that I'd convinced myself didn't exist anymore. And you make my daughter happy. I can see it. Even through all the chaos, even with everything that's happened, she's happier than I've seen her in years. Daniel found his voice. She makes me happy too. Her and Mia both. But it's been complicated. I'm aware. And I'm partially responsible for that complication. Leonard reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Which is why I'm hoping you'll accept this. Claire tensed. Father, if that's a check, it's not a check. It's a letter to the board, recommending that all investigations into Mr. Harper's employment cease immediately, that any concerns about favoritism or impropriety be dismissed, that Claire be welcomed back from her leave with my full support and confidence. He slid the envelope across the table. I can't undo the damage I've done, Leonard said. Can't take back the threats or the pressure or the way I tried to force you apart, but I can try to make things right going forward. If you'll let me. Claire picked up the envelope with shaking hands. She opened it, read the letter, and her eyes filled with tears. Why now? She asked. Why this sudden change of heart? Because I saw the press conference. Daniel frowned. What press conference? Leonard pulled out his phone and showed them a video. It was Claire standing outside Whitman Capitol, facing a wall of reporters. The timestamp was from yesterday. Claire's voice came through the phone speakers, clear and strong. I'm going to make a statement, and then I'm done answering questions about my personal life. Daniel Harper is a good man who helped me when I needed it. We've developed a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine care. Whether that relationship is professional or personal or something in between is frankly none of your business. What I will say is this, I am a better person for knowing him, and if the cost of that is some gossip and speculation, I'll gladly pay it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do. Daniel stared at the screen. When did you do this? Yesterday afternoon, Claire said quietly. After I took the leave. I was tired of staying silent, tired of letting other people control the narrative. Leonard put his phone away. When I saw that, saw you standing there claiming your life, claiming your right to make your own choices, I realized I'd been fighting the wrong battle. I was trying to protect you from a man who makes you brave enough to face down the world. That's not protection, that's sabotage. He stood up, pulling on his coat. I'll leave you two alone. But before I go, Mr. Harper? Daniel looked up. Take care of her. Not because she needs taking care of, she's more than capable on her own. But because everyone deserves someone in their corner, someone who sees them. And from what I've observed, you see her very clearly. I do, Daniel said, and I plan to keep seeing her, if she'll have me. Leonard almost smiled. Something tells me that won't be a problem. He left, and Daniel and Claire sat in stunned silence. Did that just happen? Daniel asked. I think so. I'm still processing. Your father just gave us his blessing. Apparently. Claire looked at the letter again. This is real. He's really backing down. What changed? I think he saw that you're not going anywhere, that threats and pressure and intimidation weren't working, and Leonard Whitman is nothing if not pragmatic. When a strategy fails, he pivots. So we're just okay now? The board will back off? The media will move on? Claire reached across the table, taking his hand. Eventually. It won't be immediate. But with my father's support, with this letter, we have a fighting chance. Daniel looked at their joined hands. So what do we do now? We live our lives. We stop hiding. We stop apologizing for caring about each other. And we see where this goes. Just like that? Just like that. It wasn't quite that simple, of course. The media attention continued for several more weeks. The board required 2 more meetings before officially closing their investigation. And there were still people at Whitman Capital who looked at Daniel sideways, who whispered when he walked past. But something fundamental had shifted. With Leonard's public support and Claire's unwillingness to hide anymore, the story lost its power. Gradually, other scandals replaced theirs. Other headlines captured the public's attention. And Daniel and Claire were left to figure out what their relationship actually looked like without the weight of the world pressing down on it. Claire returned to work after 6 weeks. The board welcomed her back with cautious optimism. The company's numbers had remained strong in her absence, which helped quiet the critics who'd claimed she was too distracted to lead. Daniel continued working as a custodial supervisor. There were offers from Claire's PR team, from the company's HR department, to move him into a different role, something that would eliminate even the appearance of impropriety. He declined them all. He liked his job, liked the routine, liked the fact that he'd earned his position through his own merit and didn't need to be managed into something more acceptable. And slowly, impossibly, they built something real. It started with Sunday breakfasts, Claire, Daniel, and Mia establishing a routine that felt like family. Then movie nights. Then Mia's school events, where Claire showed up and cheered louder than anyone else. Then quiet evenings after Mia was asleep, when Daniel and Claire could just be themselves without performance or pressure. 6 months after that rainy night outside Whitman Capital, Daniel took Claire to the park where he'd scattered his wife's ashes. It was a conversation he'd been avoiding, but it felt important, necessary. "Sarah was everything to me," he said, sitting on a bench overlooking the river. "And when she died, I thought that was it, that I'd had my chance at love and it was over." Claire took his hand. "You don't have to." "I do. Because you need to know that what I feel for you isn't a replacement. It's not me trying to recreate what I had. It's something completely different, something new." "Different how?" "Sarah and I grew up together. We were kids who became adults together. What we had was built on shared history and familiarity. But you and I, we're building something as the people we already are. Does that make sense?" "It does." "And Daniel, I need you to know something too. I've never felt this before. This thing between us. I've dated, had relationships, but they were always strategic on some level, always about how it looked, what it meant for my position. With you, it's just real. Even though it's messy, especially because it's messy. Messy means it matters." They sat there as the sun set over the river, and Daniel felt a peace he hadn't known he was searching for. A year after their first meeting, Daniel and Claire stood in the backyard of a house they'd bought together, a compromise between his Queens apartment and her Manhattan penthouse, a place in a quiet neighborhood where Mia could have a yard and Claire could still commute to work. It was a small ceremony. Just Mia, who wore her purple dress and carried a basket of flower petals she'd been practicing scattering for weeks. Leonard, who stood quietly in the back, his presence a statement of support that meant more than words. Jennifer, Claire's assistant, who'd become an unexpected friend. Marcus, who'd pulled Daniel aside before the ceremony and said, "You did good, Harper. You did real good." Claire wore a simple white dress that made her look nothing like a CEO, and everything like the woman Daniel woke up next to every morning. Daniel wore a suit, not borrowed this time, but his own, purchased with money he'd saved specifically for this occasion. The officiant was a justice of the peace who kept the ceremony short and meaningful. When it came time for vows, Claire went first. "Daniel Harper, you showed up in my life when I was at my lowest. You could have walked away, should have walked away by every logical measure. But you didn't. You chose kindness. You chose to see me as a person, not a position, and in doing so, you showed me what it means to be truly seen. I promise to always see you, to always fight for you, to always choose you, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Daniel's turn. "Claire Whitman, you crashed into my life like a storm. You complicated everything. You made me question the safety I'd built around myself. You made me brave when I wanted to be cautious. You made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I deserve something more than just survival. I promise to always be honest with you, to always show up for you, to always be the person you chose to trust when trusting anyone was the hardest thing you could do." They exchanged rings, simple bands that they'd picked out together, arguing playfully about designs until they found ones that felt right. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." They kissed,
while Mia cheered and threw flower petals with such enthusiasm that they ended up in everyone's hair. Leonard actually smiled, a real smile, not the corporate mask Daniel had seen so many times before. At the small reception afterward, just cake and champagne in their new backyard, Leonard pulled Daniel aside. "I want to show you something," he said, leading him to a quiet corner. He handed Daniel a folder. "What's this?" "A college fund. For Mia. Set up in your name, managed by you, with no strings attached. Before you refuse," Leonard held up a hand. "This isn't charity. This isn't an attempt to buy your loyalty or assuage my guilt. This is a grandfather providing for his granddaughter. Because that little girl in the purple dress? She's family now, and family takes care of each other." Daniel's throat tightened. "Granddaughter? If you'll allow it. I know I have a lot to make up for, a lot to prove, but I'd like the chance to be part of her life, part of all your lives. Not as Leonard Whitman, the billionaire, just as Leonard, Claire's father, Mia's grandfather. Your father-in-law, I suppose." It was the most vulnerable Daniel had ever seen the man, and despite everything they'd been through, despite all the threats and pressure and pain, Daniel found himself extending his hand. "I'd like that," he said. "We'd all like that." Leonard shook his hand, and Daniel saw moisture in the older man's eyes. "Thank you," Leonard said quietly, "for not giving up on her. On us. You're a better man than I thought existed. I'm just a guy who made a choice." "No, you're a man who keeps making the right choice, even when it costs you. That's rare. That's valuable. That's worth protecting." They rejoined the party, and Daniel watched his new wife dance with his daughter, watched Leonard stand awkwardly at the edge before Mia grabbed his hand and pulled him into the circle, watched his strange new family form itself around choices and forgiveness and the stubborn belief that people could change. That night, after Mia was asleep and the house was quiet, Daniel and Claire stood on their back porch, looking at the stars.
"What are you thinking?" Claire asked, leaning against him. "I'm thinking about that night, when I found you in the hallway. How scared I was. How sure I was that helping you would ruin my life. And instead it gave me a life I didn't know I could have." Claire turned to face him. "Do you ever regret it? The complications, the media, the fight with my father?" Daniel considered the question seriously. "No, because every complication led us here. Every fight made us stronger. Every obstacle we overcame proved that this was worth fighting for. We make a good team. Yeah, we really do." They stood there in the darkness, and Daniel thought about all the ways his life had changed, about the single decision that had cascaded into everything else, about how one act of kindness, one moment of choosing decency over convenience, had rewritten his entire story. He'd been a quiet man in a loud world trying to raise his daughter right, trying to be someone she could be proud of. And in helping a stranger one night, he'd found something he hadn't been looking for. Not just love, though that was part of it. Not just family, though that mattered too. He'd found proof that integrity meant something, that doing the right thing, even when it was hard, even when the cost seemed too high, could lead to something beautiful. 2 years later, Daniel stood in the conference room of Whitman Capital's new community center, a building Claire had designed and her father had funded, dedicated to supporting single parents and families in need. The Harper Whitman Foundation, they called it, named for a partnership that shouldn't have worked but did. Daniel ran the programs. Claire handled strategy and fundraising. Leonard, in a turn no one had predicted, volunteered twice a week, mentoring young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. Mia, now 10 and impossibly wise, spent her afternoons in the center's homework help program, insisting that if she'd benefited from good programs, other kids should too. They'd built something meaningful from chaos, something that helped people the way Daniel had helped Claire that night, without judgment, without expectation, with simple human decency. Standing in that conference room, looking at the families they'd already helped, at the programs they were expanding, at his wife working alongside her father to make the world a little less cruel, Daniel felt something settle deep in his chest. This was what a good man left behind, not money or titles or power, but proof that choosing kindness mattered, that showing up for people mattered, that one decision, one moment of putting someone else's welfare above your own convenience could ripple out in ways you couldn't predict. Claire found him there, slipping her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" she asked.
Legacies, what we leave behind. And what are we leaving behind? Daniel looked around the room, at Mia helping a younger child with math homework, at Leonard patiently explaining business concepts to a teenager who reminded Daniel of himself 20 years ago, at all the people they were helping simply because they'd chosen to care. "Hope," Daniel said. "We're leaving behind hope." And standing there in the center they'd built together, surrounded by evidence that decency still mattered in a world that often forgot it, Daniel Harper knew that every complicated step, every difficult choice, every moment of choosing integrity over ease had been worth it. Not because of how it ended, but because of what it proved. That a good man wasn't defined by status or money or titles, but by what he did when no one was watching, by the choices he made when walking away would be easier, by his willingness to see people, really see them, when the world insisted they should stay invisible. One choice, one act of decency. One night when Daniel Harper decided that helping a stranger mattered more than protecting himself. And a life rebuilt on the foundation of that choice, messy, complicated, beautiful, and completely, undeniably real.